Okay, ladies and gentlemen, marathon poker session incoming. It is approximately 6:25 in the a.m. Sun's not even up yet, and I'm hoping to put in at least 12 hours at the Aria. Gonna play some 1-3 no limit hold'em. Here we go.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we get started, want to let you guys know this was a monster session. I recorded dozens of hands, but in an effort to keep this episode to a respectable length, I've chosen the more interesting hands to discuss here today, so let's get into it. Here I arrive at the Aria a bit after 6:30 a.m. Yes, a.m. There are two tables of 1-3 no limit going. One table is full and the other only has 3 players, so I take my seat and play four-handed for a bit. In this first hand, I'm in the cutoff position, or is it the under the gun? And look down at King 10 of diamonds. I open the action for $12 and the big blind, who is still playing from the previous night, is the only caller. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 3-6 deuce with 2 diamonds. I will take that. Flush draw and 2 overs? Heck yeah. Big blind checks and I put in about a half pot c-bet of $12 and the big blind makes the call. Given he is in that position, we're four-handed, and that he appears to be going on fumes at the moment, I'm guessing his range is going to be super wide, so he could literally have any 2 cards here. The turn is the 4 of diamonds, heck yeah. However, the big blind takes about 45 seconds and decides to lead out for a bet of $20. A bit strange, that's for sure, but with my king high flush and a somewhat apparent lack of focus, I think I want to bump this one up a bit, so I put in a raise to $50. He then proceeds to say, "Oh gosh, are you one of those raisin types?" He puts in the call and says that he can't fold quite yet. The river is the ace of hearts. Now the big blind tosses out a $100 black chip, and is it possible he's got an ace high flush here? I'm a bit torn between a call and a raise. Generally in these stakes, if someone leads on the river like this, they're pretty nutted. But is he overvaluing his hand due to his focus issues? I elect to call with the $100 stack of red chips, and he turns over ace 4 offsuit for 2 pair, and with the ace of diamonds too. I show and take this one down. Nice size pot here right off the bat. Okay, a couple of spots have now opened up on the other 1-3 table, and I proceed to sit down at the same position I was in at the first table. In this first hand on the new table, I'm in the big blind and look down at ace queen offsuit. The no position player limps, the low jack limps, the cutoff limps, the small blind completes, kind of. He throws in a red chip, scoots his blue chip up, but then pulls it back. The dealer announces that's a call, so okay. And the small blind is actually the same guy I won the previous hand from on the other short-handed table. But here, I'm definitely not checking with my ace queen. Now, I generally play a raise or fold strategy pre-flop. I like to put in 3 to 5 times the big bet, plus add any additional money put into the pot, right? So in this instance, if there wasn't a limp, I'd normally open for $12. So here, 12 plus the 3 limpers is 21, plus the extra $2 the small blind put in makes a total of $23. So that's what I do here. I raise this one up to $23. However, the middle position player calls, the low jack calls, the cutoff calls, and now the small blind announces a raise to $50. What the heck? The limp call raise strategy? That's definitely a new one. I end up making the call here and everyone else calls as well. I guess a case could have been made to 4-bet here, but I'd much rather my hand be suited to do that. So here we're 5 ways to a flop, which is 9-3 queen with 2 hearts. That's a pretty darn good flop. Top with the nut flush draw, small blind checks, and yeah, gotta put some money into this pot. Yes, betting into 4 other players in a 3-bet pot looks pretty darn strong, especially when 3 of them are behind me and have yet to act. But I put out a bet of $100, which is about 40% of the pot. The middle position player makes the call and the other players decide to get out of the way. Alright, what is his range gonna be here? He initially limped and then called a raise and a 3-bet. I guess like everyone else at the table, right? He could be on a flush draw, he could have a weaker queen, or he could be on a straight draw maybe. The turn is the queen of spades, yes sir. I take a look at the middle position player's stack to see how much he has, and he thought I checked and started moving a stack of red chips in. Okay, but I said I didn't check, and he moved a stack back. Given his eagerness, though, to put some money into this pot and my trip queens, I jam for $266 effective, and he calls about as quickly as possible. The dealer throws out the all-in and call cards in front of us. The river is the 10 of clubs. I show my trip queens and he mucks, so I take this nearly $1,000 pot down. Not sure what he called with. Had to have been a weaker queen or maybe a missed flush draw. Regardless, this has been a really good start to the day so far, that's for sure. Okay, we're now about an hour into the session. I'm on the button and look down at a nice one, ace king offsuit. Folds to me and I open the action for $12 and the big blind is the only one that makes the call. Now this is the same guy that called my all in from the previous hand, so he could be a bit tilted still. So we're heads up to a flop, which couldn't be better. Deuce, ace, king, rainbow. Well, what do you do here? Big blind checks and I throw out a tiny bet of $10 hoping for a call, but he's not taking the bait and lets it go. Bummer here, but that's okay. Won at least something. Okay, in this hand, I'm on the button and look down at King 5 of diamonds. The low jack limps, and when there's only one limper in front of me, I generally raise with my standard opening range from whatever position I'm in. When there's more than one limper in front, that's when I'll generally tighten up my range a bit. So here, sticking to that strategy, I put in a raise to $15. King 5 suited is a definite open from the button. It folds back around to the low jack who makes the call. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 9-7 jack with 2 diamonds. I will take that. Low jack checks and I put out a $15 C bet and he quickly makes the call. So when someone calls like that, it 9 times out of 10 pretty much means they're on a draw. The turn is the king of hearts. All right, top pair now to go along with my second nut flush draw. Now this does bring in a backdoor heart possibility. The low jack checks and now I put out a bet of $40 and he quickly calls again. So does he have something like ace X of diamonds or is he on a straight draw? Not quite sure what he'd be holding for a straight draw though. Maybe like queen 8 or 6-8. I think he'd limp definitely with those. The river's the 5 of hearts. All right, upgraded to 2 pair here. He checks again, and even though the backdoor heart draw came in and a potential straight with the 6-8, I'm not really scared of those, or he would have most likely let out here on the river. I also feel that if he did have a set, he would have likely raised on the flop or turn with the flush draws out there. So I put out a bet of $125 in the event he's capped with something like queen jack or jack 10, but he quickly folds, so he likely was on a draw here and missed, and I take this one down. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the cutoff position and look down at pocket 8s. The under the gun limps, the middle position limps, the hijack raises to $15. Now, I said that I generally play a raise or fold strategy pre-flop. However, with pocket 8s and below, I'll generally mix up that strategy a bit if there's a raise in front of me. So here I elect to call the $15 and both the under the gun and middle position players call as well. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which is 7-4-9 rainbow. The under the gun checks, the middle position player checks, the hijack checks, and I check as well. Nobody has shown an interest, so my 8s could be in the lead here. The turn is the 9 of spades. Both the under the gun and middle position players check again, and now the hijack bets $30. I'm thinking he likely has ace high here. He raised pre-flop but checked the flop, which pretty much tells me he doesn't have a premium pocket pair or even a 9, and likely has something like ace jack or maybe king queen suited, and with possibly both of them spades. So I make the call. The river's the 10 of diamonds. Now the hijack checks, and I could put in a bet here, but I don't think he'd call with ace or king high, so I make the check. Says your pocket pair is good if you have him. I show and he mucks, so he likely did have some overcards here, so I take this one down. Okay, we're now just about a few hours into the session. In this hand, I'm on the button and look down at king deuce of clubs. The middle position player limps, the hijack limps, and yes, I said earlier that if more than one person limps in front of me, that I'll generally tighten up my range a bit, but this hand is pretty similar to the one from a few hands ago, and I'm in the best position possible at the table, so I decided to go ahead and raise this one up. I put out a bet of $20. Folds back around on the middle position player who makes the call, and the hijack calls as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is ace, king, 8 rainbow with 1 club. All right, middle pair here, pretty darn bad kicker, but a backdoor club draw too though. The middle position player checks, the hijack checks, and I check as well with that ace out there. The turn is the 3 of diamonds. The middle position player checks again, and now the hijack puts out a really low $16 bet. Now when someone bets this small in relation to the pot, that generally is a pretty reliable tell. I don't think he's got an ace for sure with that bet, but it's possible he has a king, but I'm thinking he likely doesn't. I throw in the call, and the middle position player folds. The river is the 6 of hearts. Now the hijack bet's $21. Again, super small in the relation to the pot. What, like 22% or something? You know, does he have something like pocket 7s here or a suited connector? Maybe like 8-9 of diamonds or something? I throw in the call and he immediately shows 7-8 of hearts. I show and take this one down. You know, bet sizing is a pretty big tell at these stakes. When people bet super small or super large, it pretty much telegraphs the strength of their hands. It's not the case all the time, but definitely happens a lot in certain situations. Okay, we're almost a full rotation later. I'm in the small blind and look down at pocket 10s. You know, 10s are a pretty strong hand for sure, but pretty tricky to play post-flop. Here the hijack limps, the cutoff limps, and I'm raising this one up for sure, so I bump this one up to 20 bucks. However, the big blind calls, the hijack calls, and the cutoff calls. Jeez Louise. Okay, we're 4 ways to a flop, which is 9 ace 3 with 2 spades. I check with my second pair here, the big blind checks, and both the hijack and cutoff check as well, so no one has shown an interest in this hand, and my tens may be in the lead here. The turn is the queen of diamonds, dang it. This is why tens are a bit tricky. I check again, big blind checks, and the other players check as well, so it checks through again. Alright, now looking like nobody has an ace or a queen here. The river is the queen of clubs, alright. With 2 queens out there, odds are nobody has one in their hand, and no one has shown an interest in that ace either, so I'm likely pretty good here and put out a bet of $35. The big blind makes the call, and the hijack and cutoff players both fold. I show and the big blind mucks, so I take this one down. You know, thinking the big blind possibly had a 9 here or a low pocket pair, so this worked out pretty well. I'll take it. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the low jack position and look down at ace 6 of hearts. The low position player limps, and this hand is definitely openable from this position, so I bump this one up to $15. It folds to the button who calls, the small blind calls, the big blind calls, and the middle position player calls as well. What the heck? A bit of Texas action here in Vegas, that's for sure. We are very multi-way into a flop, which couldn't be much better. 6-3 ace with 2 diamonds and 1 heart. Top 2 and a backdoor nut flush draw, I will take that. It checks to me and I'm 100% putting some money into this thing, so I put out a bet of $40. Yes, again, betting into multiple players, which indicates some significant strength, but gotta charge those draws and weaker aces. The button folds, the small blind calls, the big blind calls, and the middle position player folds. So the small and big ranges could be diamond draws, pocket pairs, and potentially weaker aces. Sets are going to be less likely, of course, so we're off to a turn, which is the 7 of spades. Both the blinds check, and now I put out a bet of $110, still trying to get some value from weaker aces and draws. However, the small blind jams for $385. The big blind gets out of the way, and now I have a decision to make. The pot's got, what, $690 in it now, and it's $275 more to call? So the pot would be $965, right? $275 divided by $965 is what, like 28% or so? So I'd need to win 28% of the time. Now I'm ahead on all the draws and weaker aces, but behind on 5-4, pocket sixes, and what, like ace 7? I throw in the call. The river's the 2 of diamonds. Oh man. I show my 2 pair and he shows 4 or 5 of clubs for the turn straight. Gosh dang it. This one is a gut wrencher. Man. Well, still a lot of time left in the day and session. Not going to let this one get to me. Okay, I took about a 5-minute break after that previous hand, walked around for a bit to regroup and reset the brain. Here I'm back and in the hijack position and look down at ace-queen offsuit. There's a $6 under the gun straddle on. It folds to me and I open the action for $20. The button makes the call, the big blind calls, and the under the gun then jams for his remaining stack of $59. Ace-queen offsuit is a bit weak to be 4-betting with the normal size stacks, but given this guy is short stacked, on average he's not going to be that strong. So I think this is a good opportunity to single him out, so that's what I do. I raise this one up to $170 and the raise works. Both the button and big blinds fold. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 10-10-5 with 2 spades. The turn is the 3 of diamonds and the river's the deuce of clubs. Well, a whole lot of nothing. He says ace high. I show my ace queen and it's good. The under the gun mucks, so I take this one down. Okay, this is one full rotation later. I'm in the hijack position again, and again look down at ace-queen offsuit. The under the gun limps, it folds to me, and I raise this one up to $15. The big blind calls, and the under the gun calls as well. The pot is a little under $50, and the flop is 5-queen-6 with 2 diamonds. Not bad, top. The big blind checks, the under the gun checks, and I'm definitely putting some of my poker funds into this pot, so I put out a bet of $20, a little under half the pot. Both the big blind and under the gun players make the call. Okay, so what could they be calling with here? Obviously a straight and diamond draws, of course. Maybe weaker queens? The turn is the ace of hearts. Heck yeah, upgraded to top 2. Both players check to me again and no real reason to slow down on this one, so I put out about a half pot bet of $50. Big blind gets out of the way and now the under the gun raises to $175. This can't be happening again, can it? Could he have like ace 5 or ace 6 here? I mean, I feel like he would have raised post flop with a set given there's a diamond and straight draw out there. So I make the call. The river's the 9 of hearts, so 7-8 gets there, but the diamond draw is dead. Now he leads for $125, about a quarter of the pot. Now I'm beating any other 2 pair here and decent aces, but I'm losing the sets of 5, 6s, and 7-8 here, right? Given when he raised and the way he played though, I'm leaning towards 2 pair like ace 6 or ace 5. It's such a cheap price, so I announce that I call, and while putting my chips in the middle, he immediately turns over his cards and the dealer places them above the board. I didn't see that and showed my cards. I take a look and gosh dang it, pocket fives. That's okay. Still the morning and a long way to go. Not going to let this one get to me. Okay, we're now about 30 minutes later. In this hand, I started the video a bit late. I'm in the small blind and look down at ace 3 of diamonds. The low jack opens the action for $15. The button makes the call. The action's on me, and now I think most of the time you should be raising here with this hand and from this position. I've been playing mostly a raise or fold strategy pre-flop so far, but decide to change things up a bit here, and I make the call, and the big blind calls as well. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which is Jack 7-3 with 2 diamonds. Heck yeah, nut flush draw and bottom pair, not bad at all. However, I'm in the worst position at the table with multiple opponents behind, so I make the check here, of course. The big blind checks, and both the low jack and button players check as well, so it checks through. The turn is the queen of diamonds. Yes, sir. Gotta start putting in some of my poker chips now, but what's the right sizing? Especially since the diamonds came in. I like to go super small here and bet $15. The big blind makes the call, and both the low jack and button players fold. So we're heads up to a river, which is the jack of hearts. Shouldn't change much here. Don't think he's got queen jack, or he likely would have seen a raise. So I bumped this sizing up a bit and put out a half pot bet of $45, but the big blind folds. That's okay, nice to secure a win, especially after those 2 big losses from earlier. Okay, we're now approaching noon. I've been playing for a little over 5 hours at this point. Here I'm on the button and look down at ace jack of diamonds. The low jack opens for $10, the high jack calls, and this is a good opportunity for a squeeze. Ace jack suited is a fine hand just to do that. So I put in a 3-bet squeeze to $40. Folds back around to the low jack who makes the call, and the high jack calls as well. Okay, so we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 7 jack 6 with 2 clubs. All right, top again. I will take it. Both the low and hijack players check to me, and yep, gotta put some money into this pot to charge any draws, so I put out a bet of $50, about 40% of the pot. The low jack makes the call, and the hijack folds. Okay, what could he be calling here with? So the low jack initially opened for $10, which is pretty small open in this game. Plus he didn't re-raise me pre-flop, and he didn't open the action post-flop, so he's very unlikely to have premium pocket pairs. So he's likely on a draw with a couple of clubs, or maybe a straight draw with something like 8-9 suited. Unlikely to have a set since we didn't see a raise either. The turn is the 5 of diamonds, so 8-9 gets there. He checks again, and this time I check back. Want to see what happens on the river for a bit of deception too? If the club draw doesn't come in and he bets, it's certainly possible he's got 8-9. However, the river is the jack of hearts. All right, upgraded to trips here. Flush draw didn't come in, and now the low jack checks again, so now I know I'm going to be good here. So what amount would he call with though? Probably nothing, honestly. I decided to put out a super small bet of $55, hoping to get a call, and he actually thinks about this for a while, a solid minute, but he ends up folding. So I guess he may not have been on a draw after all. Did he have something like ace-7 or something? Maybe pocket eights? Regardless, I take this one down, decent sized pot here. Okay, this is a few rotations later. I'm on the button and look down at pocket sevens. The middle position player limps, and as many of you may know, I am not a limper, not a fan of open limping or over limping. So I raise this one up to $15, and the middle position player is the only caller. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 3 deuce 8 rainbow. All right, I'll take that. I put out a $15 C bet, and he makes the call. Now, did he connect with this board? Given the open limp, it's certainly possible. The turn is the 4 of clubs, so now a backdoor club draw is in play. He checks to me, and this time I check back. Plan to reassess things on the river. And the river is the 10 of spades. I don't think this changes much. He checks again, and now I know I should be pretty good here. I think he would have bet with an 8 and certainly a 10. So I downsize a bit again, this time to $15, hoping to get a call, and he does call. I show my 7s, and they're good. He mucks, and I take this one down. Okay, it's now almost 2 p.m. Been playing for over 7 hours now, and we're 6-handed in this hand. Here I'm in the middle position and look down at a pretty one, ace king of hearts. The under the gun raises to $10, another small raise here, and of course I'm going to bump this one up. So I raise to $35. The button makes the call, and the under the gun calls as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 4 king 4 with 2 clubs. Works for me. The under the gun checks, and I put out a C bet of $40. However, both the button and the under the gun players fold. So I take this one down pretty quickly here. Okay, this hand is about an hour later. We're still 6-handed, and there are now more than 150 people on the wait list for 1-3. Not sure why they're not filling up these seats. In this hand, I'm in the middle position and look down at ace queen of diamonds. I open the action for $12. The hijack makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which couldn't be much better. Queen, queen, 10 rainbow. Alrighty. The big blind checks, and is this a spot to check for a bit of deception? I'm generally a fan of fast playing at these stakes, but sometimes when you're super nutted, you kind of need to let folks that catch up. However, there is a straight draw potential out there, so I think betting makes the most sense here. So I put out a bet of $15. The hijack folds, and the big blind makes the call. The turn is the 7 of diamonds, brings in a backdoor nut flush draw to go along with my trips. Yep, gotta keep building this pot up. The big blind checks, and I put out a bet of $30, and he makes the call again. I mean, not sure what he's calling here with. Maybe a 10? The river is the 5 of hearts. The big blind checks again, and now I want to put out a bet to target a 10 if he does have that. I think if I bet in the 75 to 100% range of the pot, that's definitely too much. So I go a bit lower here and bet $50, and he makes the call pretty quickly. I show my ace queen, and he mugs. I'll take that. Okay, this is now a first that I've seen at Aria. Our table is now full, and I guess because of the waitlist, they decided to add a 9th player to the table. Pretty interesting. They said it's temporary, so okay. The 9th person at the table did sit down with about 1,500 in chips, so I guess she's a transfer from a different table. In this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at ace 10 of hearts. The +1 limps, the middle position player limps. Yeah, I think I want to raise this one up. I'm 40% of the way to a royal flush, so I put out a bet of $18. It folds back around to the +1 who makes the call, and the middle position player calls as well. The new gal with the $1,500 stack folded in the small blind, so don't need to worry about her. Not yet, at least. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 6, 9, 8 rainbow. Okay, I've got a gut shot straight draw, backdoor nut flush draw, and a couple of overs. It checks to me, and yes, I would bet this flop 9 times out of 10, but I elected to check here in this instance. I want to see how things shake out on the turn. The turn is the 8 of hearts. Okay, so the nut flush draw is still alive. Definitely putting in some money now if checked to me. However, it doesn't check to me this time, and the +1 puts out a bet of $30, about half the pot. The middle position player gets out of the way, and this is a call for sure. I mean, the +1 originally limped pre-flop, so I'm thinking he's got like pocket 10s at the absolute best. He could have 7s or maybe 7-8 suited. I think all of those fit the bill, so I make the call, see what comes on the river, and the river is the queen of spades. Okay, officially done now. He now leads for $50, and this is a quick and easy fold here, so that's what I do. Okay, this is now an hour later, and the 9th person with the $1,500 stack has left the table, so we're back to 8-handed. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at 5, 6 of diamonds. I tell you, it seems diamonds have been my favorite suit this session. The under the gun limps, the cutoff raises to $10, the small blind calls, I make the call, and the under the gun player calls as well. Multi-way action again, and we're off to a flop, which is 8, queen, 7 with 2 hearts. Small blind checks, I check with my open-ended straight draw, the under the gun checks, and the pre-flop aggressor in the cutoff position now puts out a pretty small bet of $10. The small blind calls, I make the call, and the under the gun folds. I'm thinking the cutoff either has a queen or maybe on a draw as well. The turn is the 9 of clubs, so that brings in a backdoor club draw possibility. I make my straight, but it's the bottom-ended kind. But still a straight though. Small blind checks, I check again to the aggressor, and now he checks as well, so it checks through. Alright, I think it's pretty much open season at this point. The river's the 9 of hearts. The small blind checks, yep, putting out a bet now, so I bet $30, a little under half the pot. The cutoff folds, and the small blind makes the call. I show, and he takes a moment to look at the board before throwing his hand into the muck. It's now just about 5 p.m. Been putting in a full day's work, that's for sure. Here I'm in the low jack position and look down at ace jack offsuit. I open the action for $12. The cutoff then raises to $40. Folds back around to me, and yes, I'd much prefer this to be suited, but I like to call here. Yeah, pretty questionable, but if the flop is rotten, will be a pretty easy fold. So we're heads up to a flop, which is king ace 7 with 2 clubs. Well, not necessarily a rotten flop here. I check, and the cutoff puts out a bet of $50. Going anywhere quite yet with my top pair, so I make the call. Naturally, I'm a bit worried I might be outkicked here. He could have top 2, unlikely but possible. He could have queens as well and maybe a bit attached, but I don't think he'd bet here on the flop with queens. I'm thinking he could have ace queen here. The turn is the 10 of spades. I check, and now the cutoff checks back. Pretty interesting. If he had top 2, you'd definitely want to bet on this street given the club draw. The river is the deuce of clubs, which brings in the front door flush. I check again, and he checks back. He announces ace, then jack, and shows his cards. I show, and we laugh and split this thing up. Man, I feel like I got a bit lucky here. In actuality, though, we both lost because of the rake. Well, that's okay. It was a pretty fun hand. Okay, folks, at this point, I've been playing for about 11 and a half hours or so. Here I'm in the small blind and look down at pocket deuces. The hijack limps, the cutoff limps, it folds to me, and yep, another tricky spot here. Just don't think this is a raisable hand from this position, and I'm not a fan of limping whatsoever. I feel I'm a tad forced to here, so I'm a bit out of my comfort zone. Here I like to complete, and the big blind checks. So we're 4 ways to a flop, which is deuce, king, king. Okie dokie. Okay, there's no real aggressor in a limped pot, so there's no one to really check to, right? But I go ahead and check, and it ends up checking through. The turn is the queen of hearts. All right, time to start putting some money into this pot. Very, very doubtful based on the limped pre-flop action that anyone has king, queen here. So I put out a bet of $10, and the big blind is the only caller. The river is the 4 of spades. Doesn't really change anything, pretty much a blank. Now I put out a bet of $25, and the big blind ends up thinking about this for a while, but ends up folding. Man, tough to get money out of these folks when super nutted like this. Guess those kings pretty much scared everyone away. It's all right, on to the next hand. Okay, I've now been playing for a little more than 12 hours and feel pretty good at this point. Might as well keep at it. Here I'm in the hijack position and look down at ace 4 of spades. The middle position player limps. I bumped this one up to $15, and the cutoff, button, big blind, and middle position players all call. Gosh darn it. Well, at least I'm in my comfort zone, being Texas-y and all. Yeah, wish I had something a bit better to be playing multi-way, but that's okay. Gotta navigate through this. So we're 5 ways to a flop, which is deuce, jack 3 with 2 spades. All right, nut flush draw, gut shot, straight draw, and a straight flush draw. Kind of like this equity. Big blind checks, the middle position player checks, 100% chance of me putting some money into this pot, so I put out a bet of $35. The cutoff, button, and big blind all fold, and the middle position player makes the call. The turn is the 4 of clubs. The middle position player checks, and I've upgraded to second pair here with the 4. I check for a bit of pot control. The river is the deuce of clubs. All right, just have a pair of 4s now. He checks again, and I check back. Pretty much give up with that jack out there. I show, and the middle position player shows 4-5 offsuit. I win, but the dealer initially thought I lost and nearly mucked my cards. I think she may have thought that the middle position guy had a straight. After a moment, though, I tell her my ace plays, and she realizes it too and pushes the pot my way. Okay, folks, this one is a bit crazy. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at ace-king offsuit. The under the gun limps. The low jack, who has nearly $50 behind, raises to $15. The hijack calls the 15. Squeeze is 100% in order here, so that's what I do. I'll bump this one up to $60. The under the gun folds, and the low jack jams for $46, and the hijack calls my $60 raise. So we've got a couple of pots here. The main has 142, while the side pot has 28. The flop comes 6-4-5 with 2 spades. I check, and the hijack now bets $55. I've got the nut spade in my hand, so not going anywhere quite yet, so I float here, see what happens on the turn. The turn is the 3 of hearts. All right, so 4 to the straight are out there, but given the betting in this hand so far, I'm not too scared of a 7. I am a bit worried about overpairs, though. I check, and now the hijack checks as well. The river is the deuce of clubs. Okay, so a 6-high straight is represented there on the board. I check, and the hijack bets $100. There's just no way he's calling a 3-bet and a jam with pocket 7s. I just don't see it. I think he's just trying to get me off the pot here, so I make the call. The hijack shows pocket kings. I show my hand, and the low jack shows pocket jacks. So the hijack and I split up the side pot, and the 3 of us split up the main pot. Thank you, hijack, for checking the turn and allowing that deuce to come out there on the river. Works for me. Okay, in this hand, I'm in the hijack position and look down at pocket 10s, both of the red variety. Yep, got them again. I open the action for $12. The cutoff makes the call, and the big blind calls as well. With 3 ways to a flop, which is 7-king-king with 2 diamonds. Okay, as 2 kings are accounted for on the table face up, odds are these other 2 villains don't have one. Big blind checks, and I put out a bet of $20. Cutoff makes the call, and the big blind folds. Now what could he be calling here with? A smaller pocket pair, perhaps? The turn is the 4 of hearts. I think if I bet up a little bit here and he calls, then that'll pretty much confirm me as a king. So I put out about a 2/3 bet of $50, and he makes the call. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done with this hand now. The river's the 3 of clubs. I check, and the cutoff checks as well. I show my 10s, and they're no good as the cutoff shows king 9 of hearts, so he takes this one down. Okay, this is now a few hands later. I'm in the undergun position and look down at ace-king of hearts, another pretty one. I announce $12 for my standard open and throw out 3 red chips. It folds to the button who makes the call, and now the big blind jams for his remaining stack. The dealer counts it out and ends up being $81. Gives me change in the process too. Now the question becomes, do I call or raise? I think the best play is to raise here to single this guy out, so that's what I do. I bump this one up to $200. The button checks his cards before throwing them in the muck, and so we are heads up for a pot of $175. The big blind turns over, pocket sevens. I show my ace king of hearts, and we're flipping here. The flop, 6 queen ace. Heck yeah. The turn is the king of diamonds. I will take that. What, 4% chance now for a 7? And the river is the 4 of clubs. All right, I take this one down. Nice to see some cooperation with the board, that's for sure. Okay, in this hand I'm in the middle position seat and look down at pocket fours. The end of the gun limps, and this is probably at my low end of raising from this position, but I raised this one up to $15. However, the hijack, button, small blind, and under the gun all make the call. Yep, seems like that happens quite a bit when in early position here. So we are multi-way into a flop, which is pretty darn good. King, 4, jack with 2 spades. I will take that. It checks to me, and you really need to maximize profitability on these hit sets. But that darn king out there could scare folks away if they don't have one. But I need to build a pot, so I put out a bet of $45, hoping on at least one caller, but no dice. Everyone else folds. Dang. Well, that's okay. At least it's something. Okay, we're now about 13 and a half hours in at this point. Here I'm in the big blind and look down at pocket queens. The under the gun limps, it folds over to the button who limps, and yep, mandatory raise here of course. So I put out a bet of $20. The under the gun calls and the button calls as well. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 5, 4, 6 with 2 spades. I'm first to act and will be building this pot up with my overpair, so I put out a bet of $30. The under the gun folds and now the button jams for $83. Now, would he jam with a made hand here like 7-8? I don't think he would, as a jam could get me off the hand. I'm thinking he's on a draw here instead, so I throw in the call. The pot is a bit over $200 and the turn is the king of diamonds. Oh man, but he turns over pocket sevens. Well, he has some outs here. The river is the jack of hearts. I show and take this one down. A bit of a nail biter there on the river, man. In this hand, I'm in the middle position and look down at queen jack of diamonds. 40% of the way to a royal flush again, so I open the action for $12. The button makes the call and the big blind calls as well. Now their range is going to be pretty darn wide from those positions. So we're 3 ways to a flop, which is 8 jack ace with 1 diamond. The big blind checks and I throw out a bet of $20 with my middle pair and backdoor diamond draw. The button makes the call and the big blind folds. The turn is the 5 of clubs. Okay, my diamond draw is gone and this does bring in a backdoor club draw. I check and now the button bets a tiny $15. Hard to get away from this hand for that price, so I make the call. The river is the ace of clubs. I check again and now the button overbet jams for $120. You know, he bet 15 on the turn, which does give off a tell of a pretty medium to low strength hand. Unless I guess he was super nutted and trying to get at least one color. There's just too much that can beat me here. The flush came in on the river, any ace as well, so I decided to let this one go. Okay, folks, this is the hand of the session. I'm on the button and look down at pocket nines. The low jack opens for $12, and I think a case can be made for putting in a raise here. And I think actually 9 times out of 10, you should be raising here with this hand. But in this instance, I like to call here instead. My eyes and decisions are starting to get kind of funny at this point. So we're heads up to a flop, which doesn't, or I guess can't get any better. Ace 9-9 with 2 clubs. Holy smokes. Low jack checks, and I definitely need him to catch up here, so I check back. The turn is the 3 of clubs. He checks again. Dang it. Man, I get the feeling that if I even breathe on this pot, he's going to fold, so I check again. The river is the jack of diamonds. Now he leads out for $20, thank goodness. Okay, what is the right raise sizing here? I can't just do a min raise, but what would he call? I decide on a raise to $50. He thinks about this for a bit, but ends up announcing that he folds. I show my quads and the table erupts, and he shows pocket kings. What the heck? Wow, that darn ace. Now, generally I wouldn't show, but I'm getting pretty tired at this point considering leaving the table pretty soon. Definitely a fun hand, man. Okay, folks, this is the final recorded hand of the session. Not the last hand, but the last I got on camera. Here I'm on the button and look down at ace-queen offsuit. The under the gun limps. The low jack raises to $12. Yep. Time for a 3-bet again. Would prefer this to be suited, but I put out a 3-bet of $45. The under the gun folds and the low jack makes the call. So we're heads up to a flop, which is 4 ace 5 with 2 hearts. The low jack checks and I put out a $40 c-bet with my top pair. Pretty good kicker. And the low jack makes the call. The turn is the 8 of hearts, so the front door flush gets there. The low jack checks and I check as well, even though I have a second nut flush potential here. Want to see a river for free. And the river is the 6 of diamonds. Okay, the low jack checks again, and I'm likely pretty good here with my top pair. Not quite certain if any bet would get through though, but I check back and show my ace queen and the blue jack muck, so I take this one down.
All right, what a session that was. I played for 15 hours and 20 minutes. Longest session I've ever played. Going on fumes at the moment. That was by far the biggest up and down session I've ever played. I was up big time early, as you guys saw. I don't know, I was probably up like over $1,000, and then ran into a couple of bad beats. Probably not bad beats, maybe mistakes, right? I had top 2 pair, and then somebody hit the set. No, I shouldn't have gone. I know I shouldn't have called an all in. Lost what, $500 or $600 that one hand. I think I had ace queen and top 2, and some guy hit a set. That was a big pot loss, but battled back. Ended up in for 500, out for 1208 for a profit of 708. This was a fun one here at Aria. I had a good time, and can't wait to be back. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and have a good one.